Final Exam, an Avatar The Last Airbender fan fiction, Chapter 19.
The stress overwhelming her, Shiori's knees finally gave out. She collapsed to the earth, taking short, shallow breaths. Her stomach twisted as she felt bile burning the back of her throat. Prince Zuko glanced down at her, the light from his wall of fire dancing in his eyes.
Are you alright?
The kneeling girl nodded only once. Her concentration was on keeping her stomach still and quiet. She wished with all her heart that she could be older and stronger, strong enough to face any situation with the same stoic face Keisuke had given her. But she was only 14 and not even fully trained. Shiori stayed on the ground. Zuko brought his arms up and then down, hands held flat and facing downward. The wall of flame lowered with his hands, winking out of existence. His group of 3 firebenders had all assumed fighting stances. A couple of the Yuyan had them covered, the rest were scanning the surviving undergrowth, searching for any telltale signs of more interference. Zuko crossed his arms in front of his chest, putting on a convincing display of being at ease with the situation. Although only being 16, he still had a commanding presence and slightly regal bearing, or so Shiori thought from her position on the ground. Kozu canted his head slightly to one side. He gave a subtle hand gesture and the defensive Yuyan slowly lowered their weapons. The prince did not mimic the act.
Prince Zuko, we were not expecting our opponents to include you.
She's with me.
Obviously. But that is neither here nor there. Twice now she has deliberately thwarted our efforts to seize the Avatar. Such an act betrays not only us as her future comrades, but the Fire Nation as a whole.
She was following orders. Isn't that what the Yuyan are all about? Following orders without question?
Yes, well, sadly our orders were quite specific when it comes to dealing with those who interfere with Admiral Zhao's plan. You and your men may leave, Prince Zuko, but the girl must pay the price.
The Scar team swelled up with indignation. He clenched his hands into fists, tiny flames squeezing out between his fingers.
What difference does it make now? The Avatar is gone. Killing Shiori won't bring him back. She was following my orders, so I am responsible for her actions.
His right hand shot forward. A ball of fire struck the dirt inches from Kozu's feet.
I challenge you to an Agni Kai.
The inflappable warrior did not flinch or step back. Impossibly, a ghost of a smile flitted across his face. The rest of the Yuyan seemed equally amused.
I would love to take you up on that, Prince Zuko, but we are not firebenders. However, I suppose that you did make a valid point. The Avatar is gone, and executing the child will not bring him back. Likewise, I cannot see any advantage to invoking the Fire Lord's wrath by harming his only son. Still, the child must be punished for her actions.
The Yuyan paused, considering his options. The girl on the ground felt the tension in the air grow with each passing second. She wanted to tell Zuko to just leave her to her fate, that he and his men would be no match for the group before them. But she was not brave enough to utter the words. She did not dare be the one to break the hostile stillness, even if she was the cause of it. Finally, Kozu seemed to come to a decision.
As a trainee, Shiori is technically the responsibility of Headmaster Zorin, who will be receiving a detailed report of this incident. She will find that the elders of Symmetra lack any sense of humor when it comes to high treason. Good day, Prince Zuko. With any luck, you will not be seeing us again.
Kozu made a settled hand gesture. The Yuyan took a few steps back and then vanished into the forest. Shiori watched them go. The act made her smile. Even after everything that had occurred, she still wanted to be one of the best with all her heart. Her held breath exited her lungs in an audible whoosh. While she knew that the others could still assassinate her from a distance, she did not believe Kozu would order that action. Facing Master Zorin would be tough, but she knew that he, at least, would listen before judging. Prince Zuko looked down at her. The lack of combat seemed to unsettle him, taking him more than a little of his self-assured posture away. He looked at her and then looked away, shifting his weight awkwardly.
We saw your flare signal, but it seems you don't have the Avatar after all.
Shiori rose slowly to her feet, grateful when her stomach stayed put.
No, I never did. I'm sorry.
But Zhao doesn't have him either.
The girl didn't respond to that. Was it enough? Would the fact that his competition for the Avatar had also not succeeded be enough to earn her a favorable report? Would Headmaster Zorin even care about Prince Zuko's words once he read Kozu's testimony? There was only one way to find out. The hunt for the Airbender was over. It was time to go home.
I need to go back to Symmetra.
She was proud of herself. Her voice didn't waver. Zuko was staring off into the direction the Avatar had taken. He, like her, still had his sights set on his ultimate goal despite the setback. Maybe they weren't so different after all. Zuko, eldest child of Ozai, banished prince of the Fire Nation, resisted the urge to pace. Barely. He didn't want to be here. He wanted to be steaming after the Avatar before the child's trail got cold again. But his uncle had put his foot down. Returning Shiori safely to her master was his responsibility, as was making a report on her performance. Nothing Zuko could come up with would sway the old man from his firm stance. And so, here they were at the rendezvous point, a small unoccupied island just outside Fire Nation waters, which had served as a Fire Navy supply depot at the start of the war. His ship was docked at the end of a very long and rickety pier along with a small steamer that had apparently carried Zorin to this location. The girl's belongings, sans her omnipresent bow and quiver, had already been transferred. The girl herself, however, waited alongside Zuko, watching as the Greybeards talked together further down the sandy beach. The prince had already had his interview with Symmetra's headmaster, a short affair in which he had barely kept his impatience under control. He had fulfilled his promise and had given her a favorable review despite his many misgivings in regards to the Yuyan and their rather insane training program. The old man had insisted on talking to his uncle, though, effectively trapping him here. Well, he could have returned to his ship, but it didn't seem right, leaving Shiori just standing here alone. If he was twitching with impatience, the girl was fidgeting with nerves. She actually did pace in brief spurts before settling back to stand stiffly, her eyes fixated on the old man, only to resume her activity after a few minutes had passed. Her cheek and hand still sported a muted rainbow of colors. They didn't hurt, so she claimed, but initially they had been difficult to look at without flinching. Zuko wasn't sure how he felt about the Yuyan after hearing about Shiori's interaction with her fully trained comrades. Their regimental and harsh training methods were bad enough, but the way they had been so willing to execute one of their own, a child who could barely even be considered of age in the Fire Nation, chilled him to the core. The fact that one of the archers had been her one and only brother, Zuko couldn't think about that without an image of his sister Azula coming to mind. Shiori still wanted to join them, though. In fact, she seemed more determined now than ever. He made sure of that during their voyage here. In a way, he could understand that. There were times when he wanted to give up on his search for the elusive Avatar, but they never lasted long. The engraved knife his uncle had given him long ago reminded him of his purpose, even when his spirit began lagging.
Never give up without a fight.
That was who he was, and that was apparently something they had in common. Still, he had to wonder if the Yuyan way was right for the younger teen, proving that he had, in fact, learned something from traveling with the girl. He kept that thought to himself. He eyed his silent companion as she twitched next to him.
Don't worry. Uncle won't ruin your chances. I gave you a good report, so you should be... Hey!
Are they drinking tea?
Uncle promised no tea!
The sharp-eyed girl shook her head in a short, quick motion, her red-brown eyes fixated on the distant pair.
No tea.
They watched as the old men bowed to each other, signaling an end to the meeting.
Finally.
Shiori, come.
The girl set off instantly, not quite running full out, but not far from it.
Good luck.
Zuko's words came a little late, though, as she was already halfway there. To his surprise, she turned and bowed to him, her mouth open, but then she obviously thought better of it. She smiled at him, then whirled and continued on her way, pausing only to make a respectful bow as she passed General Iroh, who was taking a sweet time meandering back. Prince Zuko ground his teeth and resisted the urge to tap one foot as he waited for his uncle. Shiori slowed to a more respectable pace as she neared Headmaster Zorin. He had not changed in the months she had been absent. His red-rimmed orbs watched her with the intensity of a hawk, his narrow face inscrutable. She bowed low, a fist coming together with the flat of one hand in a sign of respect.
Well, Shiori, it seems you had quite an adventure while you were away.
The girl's face blanched slightly, wondering what Prince Zuko and General Iroh had said, worrying about Kozu's threatened message.
General Iroh and Prince Zuko seem pleased with your service. Have you been meditating on the true nature of being Yoyan? Are you prepared for the sacrifice of spirit you will have to make in order to achieve your goal?
Shiori's eyes widened with hope. Already this was going better than she had anticipated. Her words gushed out in a single breath.
Yes, Master Zorin. I understand now more than ever. I am ready to continue my training.
The lean man tilted his head ever so slightly to the right, regarding the earnest 14-year-old. Her ardent sincerity would be evident even to a blind man. He shook his head minutely, all the more the pity.
Shiori, after discussing certain things over with Shi-Yun, I have come to a decision. I will issue you your final exam here and now. If you pass, your training will be completed as promised. If you fail, your journey as a Yoyan ends. Do you understand?
Shiori could feel the confusion show on her face. The answer was obvious. No, she didn't comprehend at all. Her heart, which had begun to calm itself, resumed pounding in her throat. The final exam, right now? It was unprecedented. It was completely unexpected. But what choice did she have? If it was a matter of a skills challenge, then surely she would succeed. But Headmaster Zorin had always referred to it as a test of spirit, not skills.
Shiori, take a breath. Calm yourself.
She did as instructed, closing her eyes and reaching for the still of her inner warrior. She could do this. Her confrontation with Keisuke was all the motivation she needed to succeed. It was better this way, really. Once she passed the final exam, she would have no other obstacles in her path to becoming a full-fledged Yuyan.
Shiori, the final exam is simple. It is a test of your spirit. If you have truly embraced the life of a Yoyan, then you will easily prevail here. Are you prepared?
Yes, Master Zorin.
Very well. Kill Prince Zuko.
Shiori stared at the elder, her mouth threatening to drop open. He silently arched a wispy white brow at her, the epitome of seriousness. She turned her back on him, facing in the proper direction, her mouth suddenly dry. Her hands were shaking, her brain buzzed, screaming questions at her. She forced herself to swallow. Without saliva, it was a painful action. One trembling hand reached for an arrow.
He'll stop me, right? Of course he will. Once I show intent, he'll surely stop me. Zuko is a prince.
Unless, what if Kozu's report had detailed Zuko's role in the Avatar's escape? What if the Fire Lord had found out? What if it was his will guiding this act? Then it had to be done. Shiori was no traitor. Her hands, acting automatically, had knocked the arrow.
But that was really my fault. Why should Zuko suffer for my acts?
She knew the answer. It was because he had been her commander at the time. He was ultimately responsible, and if she didn't kill him, then someone else would. Another would follow the order without question, and she would fail her test for nothing. In her mind's eye, she could see her brother standing there, telling her that she'd never be Yuyan. Her grip on her bow tightened. The banished prince and his uncle were midway down the dock, strolling casually towards his ship. The 16-year-old was the closer of the pair. The shot would be easy, very easy. Her master's voice from long ago echoed in her ear.
We are weapons, Shiori. And like our bows, we don't care who we've been pointed at, or why.
Finally, the ramifications of those words became clear. Finally, she understood. She would not be stopped. She needed to kill her target. Exhaling a breath, the girl pulled her bowstring back, taking careful aim down the cedar shaft. The tip of her arrow bounced ever so slightly, in time with Prince Zuko's stride. Her heart pinched tightly in her chest. With an effort, she ignored it. She had to do this. She had to pass. It was no different than Zuko's quest for the Avatar. There was no way back and only one way forward. She prepared herself to release the arrow, to make it a good, clean shot, one worthy of a Yuyan. Hopefully, Zuko would never know what hit him. It was the least she could do. The muscles in her back complained at the amount of time she was taking. The bowstring felt like any little thing would cause it to slip off her fingers, as if even the slightest breeze would trigger her missile's flight. And then she slowly let the tension on her bowstring relax. With tears flooding her eyes, she looked back to her master and shook her head. It took her 2 tries to force the painfully hard admission to come. On the inside, she felt like she was dying.
I'm sorry, Master. I'm not meant to be Yu-Yan.
The old man nodded and smiled at her, the act softening his hawkish features.
I know. We have long suspected that might be the case. Although given your skills, I admit to hoping that we were wrong. When Kozu's letter arrived, I knew it would be better to test it first, before resuming your training. We Yu-Yan must be ready to kill anyone asked of us, without hesitation or question. The final exam is the ultimate test of that willingness. That is why our arrows are fletched in red, to represent the blood of our victims.
There was a muted roar as Prince Zuko's coal-fired ship stoked its engines. The teen had to reach his gangplank. He turned back to give her a final look before starting his ascension. Shiori turned dully away. He would never know how close she came to committing the act.
If I had fired the arrow?
It would never have reached the target.
The man gave a sharp whistle. 4 Yu-Yan emerged from the overgrown field that encroached on the beach. Each of them had been prepared to shoot her arrow out of the sky. She was not surprised to see that Shi-Yun was one of them. Of course he would come to see his theory proven correct.
General Iroh agreed to this most reluctantly, but the risk was very small. He himself is excellent at catching arrows, and with his firebending skills, the prince was never in any danger.
They were falling now, her tears. She blinked them away, trying desperately to hold on to her composure. All for nothing. Zuko had never been in danger. She had thrown her chance away for nothing. She kept her face to the ocean so Master Zorin could not see her shame. Footsteps approached from behind. Shiori knew without looking that it would be the 5th year instructor come to gloat.
Shiori, congratulations.
The girl turned abruptly, anger assuaging her misery. She took a breath, wanting to kick and punch and share her frustration with the world. The expression on Shi-Yun's face stopped her impending tantrum in its tracks. He was sincere.
You showed true wisdom and self-awareness that not many 14-year-olds possess. Forcing yourself to become Yu-Yan when you do not have the spirit of one, when you're incapable of divorcing yourself from the world at large and simply acting like a weapon, it would be a horrible mistake. That is a burden I would not wish on anyone.
The girl blinked, anger morphing into confusion. It took several moments for her to finally get it, to finally see her instructor with clear eyes, and other things suddenly became clear as well.
Keisuke's final exam. His target was me, wasn't it?
She remembered with clarity the one and only time she had seen her brother on Symmetra, how he had appeared to have just fired an arrow, how he had been staring right at her.
He passed without hesitation.
Shiori smiled a little, that she could believe all too easily.
Keisuke, my brother? If you had been chosen to be my test, I would never have considered it. Is that what you meant when you said that I wasn't meant to be Yu-Yan? Were you trying to show me a kindness?
He has a different spirit than yours. Not better or worse, merely different. Your natural skills surpass most of our students. If you continue to train on your own, there is little doubt that you will become a master in your own right.
Shiori blinked at the headmaster in surprise.
I will not be punished for my failure? Even though I was training at a 5th year level?
For those who complete our training and yet fail the final exam, yes. We do amputate their index fingers on their dominant hand to prevent Yu-Yan's secrets from being taught outside our organization. But you, Shiori, had only begun learning 5th year skills. You will be free to pursue whatever course of life you choose, as would any 4th year failure.
The girl winced at the last word.
I want to be Yu-Yan!
That avenue was forever closed to her now. The narrow path she had faithfully followed since her brother's departure all those years ago had abruptly come to its end. Its well-defined goal lost. Suddenly, she felt tiny and alone, adrift without purpose in a sea of potential possibilities. She had no backup plan, no inkling for what direction her life should take her now. Overwhelmed, she turned watery eyes to her masters.
Cheer up. In 2 years, you'll be 16, old enough to join the Fire Nation Army. With your skills, you'd be an excellent scout. You're still very young, Shiori. You will find a path right for you. But first, let's get you home.
Home to her aunt and uncle, he meant. Symmetra was no longer her home. She had failed. She had lost. It was over. It was terrifying and humiliating, yet a tiny touch of relief and exhilaration threaded its way in there too. With a shuddering breath, the 14-year-old took her first step on a path of her own making.
Final Exam was written by Magnusrae. Avatar: The Last Airbender is owned by Nickelodeon, Michael Dante DiMartino, and Brian Konietzko. The narrator for this story is Makeya Royer. The voice of Zuko is Decode. The voice of Kozu is Genndy C.O.G. The voice of Shiori is Lexi Orta. The voice of Zorin is Genndy C.O.G. The voice of Shi-Yun is also Genndy C.O.G. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.